And you spoke about the interview process being super critical.
Yeah, schools that offer, not every school offers an interview.
Absolutely.
Schools that do offer an interview, if it's possible to Skype in, or if you have the chance to go in, or if they, whatever, that's really important because it's another, A, it means they're considering you, and B, it's another chance to show them who you are. It's like getting to go on a date with the school and like getting to impress them. So you really want to, when you're doing that kind of interview prep, you want to strike a good balance between being prepared, doing some research on the school, and also sort of letting yourself, everybody drills their routine answers, but the school's really trying to get to know who you are.
Absolutely.
So being willing to kind of go with the interviewer, seeing where they're going, brushing up on international affairs and world news. Some interviews really push that and they want to make sure you're a student who's super plugged into the world. Now that's really specific for US interviews. The Oxford and Cambridge have a totally different interview system, which is very, very specific.
Academic.
Intensive, and there's a totally different prep for that.
Right.
But when you're doing interviews for these US schools, you want to be yourself, but you want to be your best self.
Right.
And one thing, again, just like in the essay process, you don't want to come in and rattle off your stats.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to come in and be constantly dragging the interview's attention to your certificates. That's not really having a conversation.
Right,
you want to let it be a conversation where they're really getting to know you.
To know you better. Another question I get asked is, what do you wear for an interview? How formal? How casual?
You want to look sort of well-kempt and comfortable. And well-groomed, right? Professional, but you don't need to dress like it's a job interview, right?
So no jackets necessarily?
I don't think you need a blazer, but I think that you should dress the way you would on a date. Comfortable, clean, nice, something that feels flattering because you're going to feel better in it.
Sure.
But nothing that you'd you don't need to dress like you're going to a wedding.
Okay. So Leah, you've been to Yale, you've studied at NYU. So what do you think, looking at it from a student of these colleges, what would be the differences between the two colleges and how would you tell people whether they have a right fit?
Well, I mean, one thing is I can't think of two schools more different than Yale and NYU. I did my undergraduate at Yale and then I did my graduate studies at NYU. So those were two very different points of my life as well. For Yale and schools like Yale, when I look at students who I feel like, wow, you'd really be the right fit for Yale, those are students who really are just incredibly passionate in all directions. Like when I meet a student who is just super, super dynamic and really, really interested in learning for its own sake, I often think, wow, you'd be a great fit for, like I could totally have seen you at Yale. You seem like the classmates I had at Yale. I met very few people there who weren't doing 20 things at once.
Oh boy.
NYU is a totally different animal because Yale has a lot of that really traditional college experience. And if you're looking for a school that has really like that total tradition and that bubble and that history, Yale and schools like Yale are so great because you are just totally like caught up in the college.
Right.
NYU, on the other hand, is an amazing school because New York is your campus, but you also don't have a campus. So the most self-directed young people I've met in my life, I met at NYU.
Oh, okay.
I mean, those students are really just incredible because, especially the undergrads, because they get there, they're 18, and they just take the city by storm.
Right.
So really, like, kids who are just fiercely independent and who make their own opportunities, that's an NYU student. And students who really just want, like, professionalism in every level, like the internship opportunities, just the way that students have like so many practical opportunities.
Right.
That's NYU in a nutshell. Like,
Leah, another thing I find is there's a ton of Indian students with fabulous SAT scores, fabulous school grades, and on paper, excellent results. And when I talk to them and ask them about their extra activities, sometimes there isn't much there. Now, there's a lot of these children, and then because of those excellent scores, they're all looking at the super top, ranked schools. How do we get around to telling them what is the right thing for them?
well, I think one of the issues that international students often face, especially in a country like India, where the exams are so important and it has this British system of exam qualification, is that they tend to look at the SAT like those qualifying exams, right? Yeah. So if you get this great score on the SAT, they're like, great, I'm in. I'm great, Harvard, here I come. The problem though is that like, that's wonderful that you have great scores in the SAT, so does everyone else, right? And if there's nothing to set you apart, then your application is thrown out with all the rest. Because the reason American universities like all these extracurriculars, it's not because they just they like varied students, but it's because they recognize that those life experiences are also educational experiences. Absolutely. And they want a student who has embodied that in as many ways as possible. Like a student who's really genuinely interested in history, and not because they think it's gonna look good on a resume, and not because they wanna get these leadership skills that are gonna take them somewhere else, but because they're actually passionate about the subject, because they actually care. You often see these really high achievers who've had all this pressure put on them to do well academically and well with the testing, because that's seen as an extension of the academics, but they've been actively discouraged from doing the things that fill them with passion and from pursuing those. And the thing is that when you get a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, 9-year-old who's really, really passionate about cricket, you might think like, well, what does it matter? Right. But that cricket could become forming their own cricket league. That cricket could become coaching the school for intramural youth. That interest could become something big, or it could also just be a real love for cricket, which is in and of itself wonderful and educational. So the idea that when you have these students and they're being discouraged from a pretty young age to do the things that excite them, because those are seen as distractions, what they end up with is very few things to show an international school. And honestly, when I was in high school, we had to study everything, right? We had to take English up until the end. I had to do sports, we had to do arts. I had after-school jobs. I did like 12 different activities, and it was what everybody did. I mean, it was sort of like, that's what everybody did because that's important. But it really taught me how to adapt. It taught me how to be self-directed. It taught me how to pursue the things I was interested in. It taught me what I wasn't interested in. It taught me how to balance my own time, which then in school became invaluable and in life has become invaluable. So I think that is one of the things that if you are in 10th or 11th grade as an Indian student and you think you might be interested in looking abroad, you gotta sit down with your parents and have a conversation that they might need to let you go and volunteer for that NGO in the summer and then continue that work through the fall. They might need to let you take that extracurricular beauty class and then start sort of like working with disabled people on, you know, whatever in terms of like beautification skills or teaching skills to others or wherever your passion lies. The idea of early action and early decision is that you are ready to make a decision sooner, especially with early decision where it's binding, that if you make that decision for that school, that's it, you're gonna go. Early action is a little bit more open, that it's just like you're just applying early to see before you apply in the regular. So you're up against fewer applicants, which for many students can be really attractive because it's a little less competitive. So if you look at the admissions rates for early decision action schools, they are a higher admission rate, almost inevitably. The idea of waiting for regular decision is that you're not really sure. I think the idea for a lot of Indian students there's these fall exams, these October exams, and so the idea that they maybe won't be prepared for the early action or decision deadline, which is November 1st usually, depending on the school, that's a big consideration. And then if they have started late on the standardized testing cycle, they might feel like, wow, my score is not good enough, I want to wait for regular decision. One of the things that is a handicap for Indian students is that in the United States, people take a lot more standardized tests. They don't just take the SAT, they take a lot of SAT2s, they take AP tests. So they've got a lot of SAT2s and APs, and they're just sort of front-loading their applications with tests. In fact, many Indian students struggle just to get the 2 SAT2s that most schools require. Otherwise, if you have a clear idea of where you want to go, your best shot is early.
But don't you think the applicant pool is much stronger in the early? So
it's not. Look, the applicant pool is sort of the same. There's just fewer people. And the thing is, once the school has seen the early applicant pool, then the regular applicant pool becomes more competitive because they're already like, wow, look at our first round. We've already filled this many spots and they're so strong. Everybody in the regular decision round gets compared to the early round. So you're kind of dealing with more of a blank slate. They don't know what else is coming around the bend.
mentioned liberal arts education, and the more number of students that I meet, I find an overwhelming sort of majority of them wanting to pursue engineering, or then perhaps economics and finance. I've rarely come across a third major.
Yeah.
So what do you want to tell them about liberal arts, and why should they be open to the idea?
I'm a big proponent of liberal arts education because I really think that college should be the beginning of your education, not the end of it.
Absolutely.
I mean, high school is globally this thing that we all sort of have to do, right? And everything is sort of dictated for you in high school, and you're not really pursuing your intellectual passions, right? College is going to be this open space where you're going to try a lot of different things, and the focus is going to be on educating you as a whole person. And so liberal arts really concentrates on what we call transferable skills. So how to be a creative analytic thinker, how to look at a situation and find a variety of creative solutions, how to read critically and analytically, how to write in many formats, but specifically like the analytic paper, which sort of creates a mentality of how do I look at a text and break it down, which can become how do I look at a situation and break it down for information. Yeah. How do I unpack things in a logical way and put them back together? And those are the skills that can take you into any form, any field. So the idea that you are learning how to think rather than what to do is, I think, the biggest sort of definition of liberal arts. I think that because high schools are tracked here in the same way that they are in the UK, and that there are certain careers that are seen as really economically viable, right? Yeah. It encourages students from an earlier age, A, to cut themselves off from a lot of things, and B, it discourages students to move into the humanities as a space because it's less valuable socially, right? So nobody wants to say, my kid's doing the humanities track, because it's like, oh boy, I hope she's pretty. Oh. You know, like, what, I mean, people are so, you know, the idea is, well, what's a future in that?
Yeah. So the creative skill is the least valued skill.
Exactly, but people have this idea that creativity means like painting in a room somewhere. Whereas we know that creative thinking is what dictates Silicon Valley. Creative thinking is what has made a tech boom possible. You know, creative thinking is what's going to make clean water possible in the future. Look, if you're 18 and you know exactly what you want to do, that's wonderful.
That's 1 in a million.
But that's 1 in a million. And I didn't know what I wanted at 18. Sometimes I don't even know if I want what I want now.
Absolutely.
But I do know that my education has been about building skills that I can use in many different platforms. And I think that if you do know what you want and you know you want to go into engineering, good for you, and you should absolutely pursue that. But for every student who doesn't, or who even thinks, wow, I think I might be interested in economics, but I don't even know what it means. Yeah, they may be a little bit better served by a system that allows them to switch majors, that allows them to study things of different groups, that in fact requires that they do so. One of the other things I realized too is that at 18, I didn't really know how many careers were out there. Say, for example, you at the age of 18 are interested in fashion. You think the only thing you can do is be a model or a fashion designer, right? Because you're just not aware of how many things go into making the runway possible. But then as you get older, you start to realize that there are so many aspects of fashion merchandising, styling, communication. So the idea that you would have gotten to study not just fashion design, but also the economics of commercialization, right? Or sort of looking at the politics of luxury, that you would have gotten to take things in multiple fields, it can steer you towards a career you didn't even know was possible. But you have to have the opportunity to discover that. And I think that's the real argument for liberal arts. For entirely practical purposes, if you're looking at the huge pool of Indian applicants and you're applying in finance or engineering, you are up against so many other kids. So unless you're able to show that you're diehard into economics and that you founded your own business and that you interned for the government in the Ministry of Finance and that you've done like 20,000 things, both within your academic life and your extracurricular life, you're going to have a hard sell to those universities that are looking at 100,000 other economics applicants. You're not going to have as hard of a time if you're applying for philosophy.
Sure.
You're going to be the one Indian student who's doing something different, and you're going to be much more interesting to a school that is really sick of these engineering applications.
I get it.
So even if I haven't argued for liberal arts in any positive way, and you're just like, I don't believe it, I still want to do engineering, whatever. you're gonna have a better shot. Your statistics are better. Your odds are better.
Maybe that will work.
I think that'll work better than my sort of like, yeah, just you should be a Renaissance person. You can do it. Read more books. It's gonna work out for you. Yeah, but yeah, the competition's less.
It's super. You would make such a good counselor because you have this personal experience.
Well, yeah. But I think even, I think that personal experience is really, it can be hard to find, especially here. And that's why trying to take advantage of people who are alumni, trying to actually find firsthand experiences from students and looking on forums and looking on like college feedback forums, that's so important.
Yeah, like my show.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, they do end up all looking the same on paper.
Yeah.
And it's only by really talking to somebody that you get a sense of like, oh wow, I could be really happy there. Or wow, I don't think I could.
Yeah, but it was so fabulous talking to you, Leah.
Great to
Thank
talk
you
to
so
you.
much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure a lot of my viewers have benefited hugely from what you've told them.
I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Please click the subscribe button below. Like me at facebook.com/ChetChat101. Follow my Twitter handle, ChetChat101, or at Instagram, ChetChat101. Please leave your comments in the sections below. And if you'd like me to feature any particular college, please let me know. Thank you.